Okay, this is Isaiah 61. I want to bring your attention to something in verse 11. It says, and I just love the way this is phrased, it says, through the self-fulfilling power of his word. And you can go back and read that in your own time. Isaiah 61:11. It talks about sowing and reaping. And that's just a theme that is pretty much all through the Bible, sowing and reaping. And in fact, I want to show you Hosea. Hosea is not really a book that I read a lot of. I mean, rarely. Or in fact, I don't think I've ever even talked about Hosea here. But I want to show you, I think it's Hosea 10. It has a really, really interesting, well, just let you look at it yourself, see what you think of it. Sometimes part of the art, say that 3 times real fast, sometimes part of the art of reading the Old Testament scriptures is really just to, in your own way, determine what it means. Because what I'm going through and what you're going through may be completely different. We're obviously 2 different people, but it's the same Bible. So let's just kind of look at this. It says, "Sow for yourselves according to righteousness," and then notice it says reap according to mercy and loving kindness. I love how it says break up your uncultivated ground. It says break up your uncultivated ground, for it is time to seek the Lord, to inquire for and to require his favor. If you notice in 2 Corinthians, Hosea, this is Hosea 10, says, I just love how it says break up your uncultivated ground. And then he goes to 2 Corinthians. So let me ask you a question. Where is your uncultivated ground? That could be in really any area of life. It could be physically. Maybe there's some areas of life that you just really haven't spent a lot of time sowing into. Maybe this is a season to move in and cultivate that. And if you were, I grew up with my grandparents, and we had a thing called a rototiller. Everybody loves flowers and roses and tulips and all that kind of stuff, but do we really enjoy the image of God taking a rototiller into our lives and breaking up fallow ground? Do we like that? Are we comfortable with that? Do you have a place in your spirituality, in your life, where God's going to call you into uncultivated ground? Maybe physically, maybe emotionally, maybe relationally. Maybe you're going to, and I don't want to put too much of me on this, but there's this image of uncultivated ground. And then it goes to 2 Corinthians. Notice, again, this is New Testament. It says, and the God who provides, notice Hosea 10:12, and it even speaks to Isaiah 55. It says, and God who provides seed for the sower and bread for eating. It says, so that you can sow and that you could have increase. It says, which will manifest itself in active goodness, kindness, and charity. So just a few verses there, and let your own imagination, let your own journey, I don't know where you're at. I would love to hear from you. Drop me, if you like this content, drop me a comment or share it. Let me know where you're at. I always love to read the comments and know how far this channel is reaching. But in your own life, where's the uncultivated ground? And then does God have permission to move you into that? And think of a rototiller. Does God have permission to move you into? Does God have permission to be a rototiller in, again, a physically or emotionally or spiritually? And what does it look like? If you break up ground, is it pleasant? Is it always happy? Is it always, and there's for me, I just kind of fight the idea, especially if you're from a background like mine, where, maybe like the Matchbox 20 song, there's a Rob Thomas lyric that says, I never had love from a hand that touched me. It's a really good line. It says, I never felt love from a hand that touched me. So maybe you come from a background, like kind of a Rob Thomas, Matchbox 20 background, where, the idea of God bringing you into uncultivated ground and breaking up that ground, maybe you're going to have to deal with some issues of your past. For me, just having to really, really allow that and to say, okay, well, here's a desire of my heart, and I'm going to move into that, and I'm going to do it imperfectly. I'm going to do it. It's not going to be smooth. Of course, the ego always wants to compare you to somebody who's unbroken ground. Maybe they're out of the rototill season. Maybe they're into the harvest season. So we have to be careful as we're moving into uncultivated ground that we don't allow comparisons. There's certain things that I'm really wanting to move into, and I can see someone else who maybe is so far down the road from me, and it's easy for me to get discouraged and think, wow, shit, I'll never be there. So that's the voice of the ego. Richard Rohr says the ego is always about comparison. It's always about contending or fighting and competition. So one of the ways to recognize the ego's voice is to notice that you're comparing yourself to somebody or you're in competition. So anyway, wanted to leave a few verses here, kind of some comments. I'm a big believer, kind of like Joyce Meyer says, moving into the Word. I think it's Isaiah 64 that says that God's Word has this weird quality. It's self-fulfilling. So literally reading the Word over your life, it has a self-fulfilling aspect to it. And so that's one reason why I like to go to like 1 Corinthians, for example. And maybe you're in a season where you really just need to believe that God's going to provide seed for the sower. And I love how it says that, seed for the sower. It says, thus you'll be enriched in all things in every way, so that you could be generous, and that your generosity and it can be administered and can bring forth thanksgiving. And maybe there's nothing I said that resonated with you. Maybe look at your own life and ask yourself the question, can my life pass the 1 Corinthians test of how many people are giving God thanks for my life? And that's it takes a lot of humility to look at your life and go, okay, beyond what I want, how many people can say, or how many people are thanking God for your life today? And then just kind of have some humility with that. And then maybe that could be your next prayer. Maybe that could be your next desire to say, God, I want my life to really to bring value and to bring thanksgiving. I want people to thank you for my life. And you can just maybe look in your own life and you can see people who came in your life, like for example, obviously I'm reading the Bible, but Joyce Meyer, Joyce Meyer was one of those people that has came into my life when I was, I think, 20 years old, and she really just taught the importance of getting into the Bible, getting into the Word of God, and she did it in such a authentic way. And so I could say honestly, God, thank you for Joyce Meyer, or maybe there's another pastor, Richard Rohr. He's somebody that's really blessed me. Or maybe there's a person in the arts that really blessed you. If I really thought about it, I could probably think of 10 people who really I could say, God, thank you for this person. I recently watched a thing on Steven Spielberg, and I'm like, God, thank you for Steven Spielberg. I mean, look at his artwork, look at his art form. Mel Gibson, I love cinema, I love comedy. So, again, go into the Word and let the nuances of the Word, and especially the Old Testament, let the nuances of the Old Testament come into your life. And so today, the theme or the thought is uncharted ground and breaking up uncharted ground. So ultimately, God is praised because of the life that we lived. Hope that helps. Drop me an email if you have any questions, americana417@gmail.com. If you like this content, drop me some PayPal. And then if there's any questions you have, obviously I'd like to hear those too. Email me, americana417@gmail.com.